I think we have the result of the first one on the oil price, Emma, and even if we don't, I'm going to still ask you for your point of view. So there we go, 35%, closer to $100 by the end of the year in 29.90. So 90 to 100 seems to be the majority of the room. We're around 90 today. What would you say on that?
B.
Okay, and can you tell us why?
I think we discussed it briefly this morning, that the relative value of energy and the relative supplies, depending on what happens to OPEC today, which none of us know. But I think in the 80 to 100 range, I think that feels like a current market price for the crude.
Okay, I mean, as you said, OPEC is meeting today. What volume would it take for them to cut for us to get to 100? Let's say, what would you advise them to do if you wanted to guarantee that we get to 100 by the end of the year?
I think I don't think that you can answer that question as one, because there's so many other macro factors basis that. What happens to oil demand? As we know, the impact of pricing this year has been majority felt in the gas markets and the power markets on the back of that. But so OPEC is part of a total equation. It is not a barrel change in OPEC has an immediate cause and effect on the price. There's other factors there.
I mean, and let's just talk about one of those factors, as you mentioned just now, which is this demand factor. We've got China with its demand having dropped for a year or two. The outlook for the fourth quarter is no different. Its GDP this year is going to be closer to 2% than 5%, etc. So given that we have demand destruction already setting in, why would we be thinking we could reach 100, especially when there seems to be enough supply in the market right now? We're talking oil, obviously, not gas.
Yeah, I think China's a case in point. I think there's other geopolitical influences coming into force at the end of the year that are going to force changes in prices, and how the East responds to increased sanctions is going to be very telling in that regard. Okay. But I agree with you. As a matter of course, China demand post-party conference in October, if they do lift COVID policies, should stabilize. Yeah,
and it could actually spike prices up. Okay, well, let's get on to another couple of questions for you here, Chris, and for the audience, obviously. If, again, we can have your vote, and we'll show you the results as they come up later this morning. Russian oil is coming east of Suez into Asia and the Middle East, while refined fuel produced in this region is flowing to the west. As the global oil trade flows change directions, of course, we've seen a lot of that change of direction this year as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war. How long will these changes last? And there's your three options: months, years. Could they become entrenched? Could they become permanent? Chris, where do you stand on that?
I think, unfortunately, I don't think it's something that gets solved in months. I think we're looking at years or beyond, at least a year. Maybe not years, but at least a year.
Okay, and does that, I mean, is that dependent on how long the war lasts with Russia and Ukraine, or is that not the only factor that's going to influence these flows?
I think the war and the consequences of the war.
Okay, and that could, as you say, last a few years. What about the economics behind that, in terms of it making financial sense for those who are buying and selling this oil, shipping costs, etc.? Does that not deter this becoming more permanent? For crude, potentially, but in a balanced market, in a normalized market, expect product to find its natural home. So whether it lasts more permanently than a year or two really depends on how the geopolitics sit. Unnatural arbitrage is not something that's sustainable under normal economic conditions. Okay. We had the results up there a minute ago. I don't know if you wanted to have a look at them, but our audience had to go. Let's go to the second question. Arabian Gulf is due to add new refinery capacity over the next year or two of 1 million barrels a day, with Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Oman adding those volumes. So a big increase in refining capacity from this region. Where will most of that output now go
in the aftermath of the war in Ukraine, or as the war continues, and European sanctions on Russia. So as that capacity comes on stream, will it go to the west, east, or split between the two? Chris, we're going to get a result. We'll wait for a result. And abracadabra, there we go. That's pretty evenly spread. Okay, east-west, it seems like 38%. Chris, again, we're talking about flows here of products. Obviously, we just addressed that, but what would you say? Which answer would you agree with?
I mean, the imbalance caused by the displacement of natural imports into the West will allow product from this region to go west. Again, whether that is a natural flow or not will depend on east-west arbitrage, and that will be determined by market conditions.
Okay, and I mean, any impact in terms of, China obviously is another country which is increasing its refinery capacity massively, and at the moment limiting its exports into its own region, but clearly the potential is there. And how might that impact the thinking of these refiners in terms of where their product can go, and will it impact? Or do we have enough demand?
So China increased export quotas in the fourth quarter, will likely find a home east, and then that will allow product from this region to flow west.
Okay, and just one more question to you on that. We have a workshop tomorrow on benchmarks. Will this influence at all where benchmarks go in terms of the development of new ones for east of Suez?
I think we've got enough benchmarks. I think benchmarks have an issue right now around volatility in the market, liquidity, and margining requirements to hold any kind of futures position. So I don't think it impacts directly. I'm not sure the market needs a whole set of new benchmarks. I think we need to make sure that the benchmarks we have are fungible, are liquid, and are affordable.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris, for
Thank you.
For your thoughts on those questions. Thank you, everyone, for participating.